Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the All-Star Wrestling Review Series for um, the 24th of May, 1980. And again, I mean, this series has been fun because it's stuff that I didn't get to see, stuff actually at this point before I was born, and just really cool to watch wrestling back when wrestling was wrestling and not the pre-choreographed dance routines that pervade in pro wrestling 40 years later. In any event, Pat Patterson and Jose Estrada are up here. Patterson, of course, your former Intercontinental Champion, having lost the belt recently to Ken Patera. And in any event, Patterson uses power early, drives his man back to the corner a little bit, tries to get everything he can out of the process. And Estrada comes back a little bit, and some side headlock takeovers, rake of the eyes, basic stuff. Patterson tries a full Nelson, which is ironic because the full Nelson is the main hold, primary hold of the man who defeated him for the Intercontinental Champion in Ken Patera. Of course, Patera, a multi-time powerlifter, talking about having hundreds of world records and all this stuff, and actually does that promo in the weeks to come there. Kind of Rivera managing to kind of come up and do a bunch of punch kick stuff. Patterson rolls him up and gets a victory relatively quickly there. We'll move forward to the next in series of contests here, which includes but is not limited to the wonder that is Pedro Morales defeating Mark Pohl via submission, Boston Crab 501. Pedro Morales, again, I've mentioned this before, I'll mention it again. Pedro, not exactly a guy I understand the value of in this time frame. Obviously, a former ethnic world champion, intercontinental champion, and tag team champion is where he ends up. But Pedro, certainly a guy that I think is an acquired taste that maybe doesn't age as well as a world champion as many others would have. Anyway, side headlock takeover. And it's not necessarily that I don't think that there was value in having an ethnic champion of Latin descent, but I don't know that his ability to talk, nor his in-ring kind of back and forth. He's a very punch-kick wrestler. Bruno was, but Bruno was a good talker, and he was believable. Pedro doesn't really have the talking or the wrestling, and so it's kind of hard to understand. But he shoots a half, gets a near pinfall on his opponent. The idea that a guy like Tony Atlas, though, can beat this guy in 2 minutes, and it's taking Pedro 5 as a former world champion, doesn't make a whole lot of logical sense either. Pedro, with a lot of punch kick here, tries to get advantages over his opponent. And then we move to, after the Boston Crab, an interview with Quick Draw Rick Mcgraw, who passes in 1984. But he's here making his debut in the WWF. Talks about having wrestled in Florida for Eddie Graham and with Jack Briscoe, and talks about various other people. Talks about being born in the Carolinas and wanting to come to the Northeast to be the one of the in the best territory in the world. Really excited about being there, and soft-spoken guy with a good body. Kind of interesting that they're letting him talk about other territories. Not generally something that's done. So I think they were trying to get him over to some degree as kind of an everyman sort of individual. Rick Mcgraw pinning Moose Monroe 414 with a flying body press from the middle turnbuckle. In this specific match that he has here. Mcgraw has a bit of a bodybuilder's body without all of the clunkiness. Also, bodybuilder in 1980 much different than bodybuilder in 1990 or in the 2000s for sure. So kind of still able to move around a bit, but still having much more a stocky frame. Thus, Moose Monroe, not a bad idea in terms of who to put him in there with. Some power moves and a body slam or two by Mcgraw, getting over the power aspect and kind of actually does the falling forward style slam, which gives him an advantage for sure. In any event, the second rope crossbody gets him the victory as well, and he is happy with that for sure. Then we move to the next in the series of offense, which happens to be, or matches as it were, which happens to be the tag team champions, the Wild Samoans, with Captain Lou Albano defeating Rene Goulet and Dominic DeNucci via countout 12:02. DeNucci's counted out after being thrown to the floor and being distracted by Albano. After the bout, Bruno Sammartino interviews Goulet and DeNucci at ringside. Lots of rage, lots of anger. This is very much a punch-kick match, but DeNucci still has, here in 1980, enough value that him being in the ring with the Samoans gives the idea of a potential for some degree of, retribution for the babyfaces, return to things as the babyfaces want to take over, and it's kind of here that we see that Lou Albano is pretty well here, kind of there, just as a heater and a distraction point. Lots of stalling going into this, and a hug between the Samoans and Albano. Samoans take the majority of the match. Don't know why this needs to be 12 minutes. Probably because tag team championship matches and going in that direction are. Also, the build-up of Rene Goulet over the last couple months makes a little more sense with the idea that he's going to go and be, at least for television purpose, and probably for house show purposes too. I'm not terribly familiar with 1980 house show cards, but the idea is that that Goulet would become a challenger in that way. DeNucci takes a good bit of punishment throughout. Finally, a fall into tag on to Rene Goulet. Goulet takes the Samoans over a little bit, but they seem to outpower him. Obviously, him being maybe 230, 40 pounds, and both of the Samoans being well over the 300-pound mark. Also, punch kick and some cheating from the outside from the captain, Lou Albano, and ultimately, again, DeNucci falls to the outside, grabs a chair. Bruno Sammartino trying to calm him down. Doesn't get very far, but they want another match with the champions, the Samoans, going forward. Then we see the final match of the day. Tony Atlas defeating Frank Savage in the middle of the ring, and certainly Tony Atlas is a guy who really wants to be one of the better stars of the era, and again we see kind of things going that way. Atlas with the takedown, lots of wrestling around, lots of basic stuff. Atlas managing to use his power, but only in small doses. Hasn't really seen, other than the challenge from Ken Patera, major challenges as it were. Enhancement talent gets a couple of forearms off on Tony, but doesn't really get a clear, definitive, way he's going to go. Anyway, we see Tony Atlas get the press slam and the victory and the body slam and suplex, and Atlas gets the victory as we move forward into the last of May here in 1980 in All-Star Wrestling.